Now, I don't know if any of you remember, but those of you who weren't here won't know this, but week before last, I started a series about getting real. And we talked about getting real about life lessons. And what we said is that, you know, we draw to us the life lessons that we need. And if we choose not to pay attention to them and learn from them, those lessons go away, they change their clothes, and they come back and bringing their friends. We will get a chance to learn those life lessons. And today we're talking about getting real about relationships. Now, we're not talking about the kind of love you find in the greeting cards or on a rom-com television show. We're talking about the power of love that is practical, grounded. It's a transformative force. And guess where it lives? It lives inside of us because we're divine beings. Specifically, today we're going to look at how compassion, kindness, and authenticity, when we bring those into our relationships and we stay centered there, that helps us to feel grounded and our relationships feel solid when we do that versus how the world's kind of feeling like everything's kind of chaotic. We often think of love as something that happens to us. It's not. In our shared spiritual journey, we understand that love is a principle. It is the very fabric of the universal mind of God. It's the very fabric of God. God is love. And because you are a spiritual being, love is already in you. It's not something you have to go out and find. It's something that you get to choose to reveal. In 1 John 4:18, it says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear." Now, metaphysically, perfect love isn't about being a perfect person. It refers to that state of consciousness that we can have where we're so aligned with God, so aligned with our inner wisdom that we have no room for fear to exist. And when we're in that state of love, we are not looking for what's wrong. We are seeing wholeness that is already around us, no matter what we see on the television. So I have 4 things that I want you to remember today about improving and being real in relationships. And the first one is radical compassion. And the first step of getting real about a relationship is practicing compassion. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. In a chaotic world, people are often operating from a place of survival. And so when somebody's rude to us in traffic or they're short with us at the office, our instinct is to react with that same energy. But compassion asks us to pause, to stop, and realize that every person is doing the best they can with the level of consciousness that they have in that moment, including those people that we see on the news. Compassion is the spiritual softening of our heart that allows us to see through the fog of another person's pain. When you and I judge someone else, we build a wall between us. But when we offer compassion, we're building a bridge between us and the other person. We begin to understand that behind every thorny exterior is a person who, just like us, desires to be loved, to be seen, to be understood. Unity's co-founder, Charles Fillmore, once said, "Love in divine mind is the idea of universal unity. In expression, love is the power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything in it." When we practice compassion, we are actively choosing to see universal unity. We are looking past human personality, which can be pretty messy and reactive. We're looking to the individual expression of spirit that is each person's true nature. They hide it well sometimes. But it's our job to look for it, to find it, to see it. If you ever doubt this principle, there was a newspaper article that I read, and I don't remember even how many years ago, and it was called "A Lesson Learned on a Bus in Kenya." And it was near Christmas time, and a bus was carrying Christians and Muslims, and it was forced to stop by 10 heavily armed militants. And the plan was clear. Based on previous attacks, the militants ordered the passengers to separate, Muslims on one side and everybody else on the other. They intended to spare those of their own faith and slaughter the rest. But in that moment of chaos and terror, something miraculous happened. The Muslim passengers refused to move. They refused to separate themselves from the others on the bus. In fact, they offered their headscarves. They stayed together. And when the militants threatened to shoot, the passengers stood their ground. One passenger later said, "We stuck together tightly. We protected our brothers and our sisters." And faced with a unified wall of love and solidarity, the militants gave up and left. Nobody got shot. In the face of death, those passengers saw each other first as human beings, as expressions of the same life. They looked past religious labels. They looked past political chaos to recognize the oneness that binds us all. And that is what I believe is compassion personified. It's the realization that my brother's life is my own. Your brother's life is your own. You know, most of us, thank goodness, won't face a bus with militants. But we do face micro battles every day. Imagine you have a coworker, and let's call our friend or someone at the grocery store, just however you want to think of it. We'll call this person Frank. And Frank is what we might call a sandpaper person. Try saying that quick. Sandpaper person. He's abrasive. He interrupts. He seems to find a problem with every solution. And what do we want to do when we're faced with those sandpaper people? We want to fight back, or we want to avoid them. But when you and I get real, and we choose to see Frank through this lens of oneness, we might find out that Frank is a caregiver of a parent and is exhausted beyond measure. And by offering a simple, "I appreciate how hard you're working," you introduce love into that relationship. You haven't changed Frank's circumstances, but you have changed your own consciousness of him. This is the power of divine sight. It's the ability to look at someone and say, "I see the struggle you're in, and I honor the light that's within you that is bigger than that struggle." I look beyond your abrasiveness to see that there is something bigger. If those passengers on the bus could see the divine in one another under the threat of death, what labels can you and I drop today and begin to see the Spirit in somebody that we've been judging? First is compassion. Second is kindness. Now there's a difference between being nice. I know how to be nice. That's a social convention. It's a mask we wear to keep peace. But kindness is an intentional act of love. It's authentic. It's the realization that a small gesture can ripple out and shift the energy in an entire room. Ernest Holmes, founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, said, "Love is the self-givingness of spirit through the individual, which implies that we must give of ourselves to others." Kindness is that self-givingness. And it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. In fact, the most potent kindnesses are often found in the smallest gestures, in the smallest moments, because those moments happen in the real world, in the grocery line, at the post office, or in a quiet text message to a friend. When we practice kindness, we are practicing abundance. We are saying that we have enough love to give away, and that by giving it, we don't have any less. In fact, in the economy of spirit, the more love we give, the more we realize that we have. And if you were looking for an example of this, I know I've referred to this show before, but if you look at the character Ted Lasso, he always responds to insults and chaos with unrelenting, authentic kindness. And there's a famous scene where he's being mocked by a skeptic, and instead of defending himself, he simply just stays curious. He chooses to see the potential for a relationship rather than seeing a conflict. Kindness is a strategy for a whole life. It's not about being a doormat. It's about being a creator. When you decide to pay for the coffee for the person in line behind you, or when you leave a note of appreciation for someone who feels invisible, you're planting a seed in the divine soil. You are telling the universe, I believe in good. And in this chaotic world, kindness is a radical act of rebellion. And it's a rebellion against that narrative that there's not enough. It proves that the flow of life is generous. Compassion, kindness. 3, vulnerability and authenticity, taking off the mask. We cannot truly love if we are not willing to be seen for who we really are. In our modern world, we spend a lot of time curating our lives on social media, in our careers, even in our spiritual communities. We want to look like we have it all together. 2 weeks ago, when I was doing that lesson, I didn't have it all together, and y'all laughed. Some of you remember. But real relationship requires authenticity. Philosopher Martin Buber spoke about the I-thou relationship. He suggested that the most of the time we see others as it's. You know, they're there to get me something. They're there to help me in some way. They're an obstacle in my way. But we drop the mask and we see someone soul to soul. We enter an I-thou space. where the divine is present, where God is present, where our spirits meet. Authenticity is the courage to let our outside match our inside. To get real, we have to be willing to say, I'm struggling, or I don't have the answer. Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's a doorway to deep spiritual connection. It's a realization that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. And human experiences include messiness. It's that vulnerability that we find in 12-step groups where we are willing to say, here I am. You know, there's an old wisdom story about a water bearer who had 2 large pots, and one of them was perfect and one of them had a crack in it. And every day the water bearer would walk down to the stream and fill up the pots, and he'd walk back up to his master's house, and along the way the water would go, and the one with the crack, some of that water would leak out. And one day the pot, feeling bad, apologized to the water bearer. And the water bearer said, did you notice that there are flowers only on one side, on your side of the path? I knew about your crack, so I planted seeds on your side, and every day you have watered them. You know, in our relationships, we try to hide our cracks. We think we have to be fixed before we can be loved. But it is through our authenticity, it's through our cracks, it's through sharing that we open ourselves up to really love and be loved. It's how we create a space of wholeness that perfection can never touch. And so I'd ask you, where in your life are you wearing a mask? The mask of perfection, trying to hide. And what would it feel like to let your true divine self be seen? Compassion, kindness, vulnerability, and authenticity. And the last thing I want to say about getting real about relationships is that you need to set an intention to be the calm in the storm. To navigate the chaos in this world, we must realize that our relationships are a reflection of our internal state. If we are chaotic inside, our relationships are going to be chaotic. But if we cultivate a practice of inner peace, we become a non-anxious presence for others. We aren't victims of the world's energies. We are creators of our own experience. By setting a daily intention to be a vessel of love, we change the vibe in every interaction we have. That means we're aligning with principle, we're aligning with God. We are deciding when we get up in the morning that we are going to be loved and that we are going to be at peace. We are deciding that that's the energy that we want to have that day. Think about an oak tree in a storm. The wind blows, and we have these summer storms that come up, the rainstorms, and the trees blow, but that oak tree stays steady. The smaller bushes are tossed about, but the oak tree is deeply rooted, and its branches may sway, but its core is steady. In your family, in your workplace, in your community, you can be the oak tree. You can be the person who is stable, that is the place of peace. When everybody else is being tossed about by the latest political crisis or workplace gossip, you can choose to remain rooted in your inner wisdom. You don't have to join the chaos to understand it. It's real tempting to join that chaos. But it's a temptation that we can not take, not pick. By staying centered in love, you can provide a shelter where others can find their own calm. We don't do this by lecturing them, though we might want to. We don't do it by acting holier than thou. We do it simply just by embodying peace, being stable, being grounded. When you are centered, people feel safe around you. And they begin to drop their defenses. Your peace becomes contagious. And this is how we change the world. Not by shouting louder than the chaos, but by being a stillness that the chaos cannot move. How can you root yourself in spirit right now in this moment so that you can remain steady when the storms happen? Getting real about relationships means moving past shoulds and must of dogma and entering the flow of life. It's about recognizing that every person you meet is a mirror. And guess what they're reflecting back? Parts of your own consciousness. When we choose compassion, like the passengers on the bus, when we choose kindness, like with an act of abundance, or authenticity, sharing our cracked pots, we aren't making just making our lives better. We are literally healing the world. We are proving that love is the greatest power in the universe. As we walk this journey together, let's remember that we are never alone. Spirit is here. God is here, breathing through us, loving through us, guiding us every step of the way, every moment. And you and I can be creators of peace because you are a vessel of love. In this chaotic world, your presence, your real, authentic, compassionate presence is the greatest gift that you can give. So this week I invite you to set an intention each day. Before you check your phone or start your day, just take 3 breaths and use the handout that I'm going to give you, because it's going to give you affirmations, but you might say something like, today I choose to see the divine in everyone I meet. I'm a channel of abundance. I am a channel for kindness. I am the peace in the midst of the storm. When you do that, you'll notice that your relationships are shifting when you lead with love. And so it is. So we let it be.